My brother abandoned his 3 kids for 8 years, and now he's back, suing me for kidnapping because I raised them. I never thought I'd be the woman getting served custody papers at a playground, while the 3 kids I raised for 8 years watched their dad try to steal them back. But here we are. It started with a 2 a.m. call from the hospital 8 years ago. My sister-in-law had died during an emergency C-section, and my brother Terrence was catatonic. When I got there, he was clutching her death certificate like if he held it tight enough she might come back. His 3 kids were also there. Millie was 6, Noah was 4, and baby Lily was hours old screaming in the nursery. I left for 10 minutes to get him some coffee. When I came back, I found a note on the hospital pillow saying he couldn't look at his kids without seeing her, and he just needed a few weeks. By morning, his phone was disconnected, and the social worker said that either I had to take them in or they'd send them to group homes. I was 2 semesters away from finishing law school, but signed the papers anyway. That first week nearly broke me. Millie kept asking when mommy was coming back while I fumbled with formula at 3 a.m. The landlord threatened eviction over Lily's crying. I couldn't enroll Millie in school without guardianship papers, and the pediatrician turned us away without parental consent. Then I discovered Terrence had emptied their joint account and listed their house for sale. His job said he'd resigned via email with no forwarding address. I had $1,847 in savings, and student loans were coming due. I had no choice and withdrew from law school. The first sign of life came a year later, a photo from some meditation retreat with Terrence claiming he was still healing. By then I was working overnight warehouse shifts and day shifts at a diner while Millie had started calling me mama during nightmares. My boyfriend of 3 years walked out saying he didn't sign up for an instant family. I spent that Christmas alone crying after the kids went to bed, wondering how long I could keep going. By year 3, I'd made restaurant manager and moved us to a 3-bedroom. Terrence's Instagram showed him backpacking Peru on his spiritual awakening journey. He'd surface for birthdays with expensive gifts, staying 45 minutes max, always promising to figure things out soon. What killed me was learning he'd inherited $200,000 in life insurance, but claimed he needed to find himself first, while I scraped together money for Noah's speech therapy. Years passed and we built our life. The kids thrived. School forms listed me as their mother, and Terrence never corrected it. He visited maybe 3 times a year playing the uncle who brought cool presents. I'd given up on him ever stepping up. Then 8 years after his disappearance act, his posts changed. Suddenly he had a house and a girlfriend named Crystal, who called herself a life coach, and then a pregnancy announcement. He started asking about the kids' schedules, showing up to Millie's recital with Crystal. It was his first school event ever. Crystal kept commenting how wonderful the children were, and Terrence requested copies of all their records for his files. My gut screamed something was wrong. The ambush came 2 months later. Terrence asked to meet at the park to discuss the kids' future, but showed up with Crystal and a lawyer who slapped papers in my hand. They were charging me with kidnapping, alienation, and emotional damages. Crystal had her phone out recording while Terrence claimed I'd refused to let him see his children all these years. He had edited texts that made it look like I'd kept them from him. The kids were watching everything, and Millie was shaking so hard I thought she might collapse. Then the truth came out. Crystal's pregnancy was high risk and expensive. Terrence's inheritance was gone from a failed wellness center. But here's the kicker. My sister-in-law's parents had set up trust funds for the grandchildren, only accessible if Terrence had custody. He'd been planning this for months, but I was ready. I had everything documented though. 8 years of receipts, medical records, school forms, every text showing his abandonment. His own mother testified for me, revealing he'd asked her for money constantly, but refused to take the children. She told the court how he'd said they were better off with me. The judge interviewed each child privately. Millie told her, he's not my dad, he's just the man who visits sometimes. Noah showed his journal where he called Terrence the toy bringer. Lily didn't even recognize him as her father. She drew me in every family picture. All 3 begged not to be taken from me. Terrence's story kept changing under pressure. Crystal's face went white as she realized she'd been lied to about everything. He finally admitted to needing space, but claimed time got away. Then he accidentally revealed he'd been claiming the kids as dependents for tax benefits all these years while I paid for everything. I thought we had won. The judge seemed ready to rule in my favor. Then a court officer rushed in whispering urgently. The judge's face changed completely. She called an immediate recess, announcing the biological grandparents had filed an emergency petition, claiming neither Terrence nor I should have custody, and that we'd both been hiding something critical about their daughter's death. My sister-in-law had left a sealed letter with her attorney only to be opened if custody was ever disputed. Terrence looked genuinely shocked for the first time. I'm sure I had the same expression on my face. The courtroom erupted into chaos. Terrence jumped to his feet, his face cycling through confusion, anger, and something that looked like fear. Crystal grabbed his arm, her perfectly manicured nails digging into his sleeve. The kids huddled closer to me on the bench, Lily burying her face in my side while Noah's small hand found mine. The judge banged her gavel 3 times before the noise died down. She announced we'd reconvene in 30 minutes to review this letter. As the bailiff ushered everyone out, I caught sight of my sister-in-law's parents entering through a side door. They hadn't spoken to me since the funeral. In the hallway, Terrence cornered me before I could get the kids to the family waiting room. His cologne was overwhelming, the same expensive brand he'd started wearing after his spiritual journey. His hands shook as he grabbed my shoulders. What did she tell you? His voice cracked, all pretense of calm gone. What did Sarah tell you about that night? I pulled away, positioning myself between him and the children. She didn't tell me anything. You know that. You were there when she went into surgery. Don't lie to me. He was practically shouting now, drawing stares from other families in the hallway. She must have said something. About the insurance, about the— Terrence, stop. Crystal's voice was sharp as she pulled him back, but I noticed how her hand trembled, how her other hand moved protectively to her pregnant belly. She knew something. My lawyer, Alexandra, appeared at my elbow and steered us away. The kids were silent as we entered the small conference room, but I could feel their fear radiating off them in waves. Millie hadn't let go of my hand since we'd left the courtroom. "Anne, I need you to think very carefully," Alexandra said once the door closed. "Did Sarah ever express any concerns about her safety? Any fears about the pregnancy?" I started to shake my head, then stopped. There had been something. The week before she died, she'd asked me to meet her for lunch. She'd been 8 months pregnant, moving slowly, constantly shifting to find a comfortable position. She'd seemed nervous, kept checking her phone. She asked me about life insurance. I said slowly, whether Terrence had ever mentioned anything about policies. I thought it was just pregnancy anxiety, you know, planning for the worst case scenario. Alexandra's expression tightened. What exactly did she say? Before I could answer, there was a knock at the door. A court officer entered, his face grim. The judge wants all parties back. Now, back in the courtroom, the atmosphere was electric. The judge held a manila envelope in her hands, the broken seal visible even from where I sat. Sarah's parents were now seated in the front row, her mother clutching a tissue. I've reviewed the contents of this letter, the judge began, her voice carefully neutral. It raises serious questions that require immediate investigation. Mrs. Sarah Chen wrote this letter 3 weeks before her death, expressing specific concerns about her safety. Terrence's lawyer jumped up. Your Honor, we object to the admission of this letter. It's hearsay, written by someone who was afraid for her life, the judge interrupted. According to this letter, Mrs. Chen discovered her husband had taken out an additional $2 million life insurance policy on her without her knowledge. She also states that he had been pressuring her to schedule an early C-section, despite her doctor's recommendations to wait. The blood drained from Terrence's face. Beside him, Crystal had gone completely still, her eyes wide with dawning horror. Furthermore, the judge continued, Mrs. Chen writes that she overheard a phone conversation where her husband discussed timing and maximizing the payout with someone she didn't recognize. She was afraid to confront him directly. This is ridiculous! Terrence exploded, shooting to his feet. Sarah was paranoid during her pregnancy. The doctor said it was hormones. She was always dramatic about everything. The judge's eyes narrowed. Mr. Chen, you will sit down and remain silent, or you will be held in contempt. But the damage was done. His outburst, his admission that Sarah had been dramatic about her fears, hung in the air like a confession. I felt Millie flinch beside me. She was old enough to understand what was being implied. Given these revelations, the judge said, I'm ordering an immediate halt to all custody proceedings pending a full investigation. I'm also appointing an emergency guardian ad litem to assess the safety and well-being of the minor children. Sarah's mother stood up, her voice shaking. Your Honor, we tried to warn someone 8 years ago. We saw the bruises. We knew our daughter was scared, but Terrence convinced us she was overreacting, that the stress of pregnancy was making her irrational. She turned to look at me, tears streaming down her face. We should have protected her. We should have listened. Please don't let him hurt anyone else. The judge nodded gravely. The court will take a 1-hour recess. When we reconvene, we'll discuss temporary custody arrangements and next steps. Mr. Chen, you are not to approach the children or Ms. Ann Chen during this time. As we filed out, I heard Crystal's voice, high and panicked. The insurance. You asked about my insurance last week. You said it was for the baby, but not here, Terrence hissed, grabbing her arm. Don't touch me. Crystal wrenched away, stumbling slightly. Oh my God, what did you do? In the hallway, everything moved in slow motion. Terrence's mother appeared from nowhere, approaching us with tears in her eyes. Anne, I need to tell you something. I should have said it years ago. But before she could continue, my phone buzzed with a text from Millie's school. My blood ran cold as I read it. Mr. Chen is here to pick up Millie early. He said there was a family emergency. Please confirm. He's at the school, I gasped, showing Alexandra the message. But Millie is here with me. Why would he? That's when I noticed. Noah wasn't beside us anymore. In the chaos of leaving the courtroom, somehow he'd gotten separated. My heart stopped. Where's Noah? I spun around, scanning the crowded hallway. Where is he? Millie's face went white. He was right behind us. I saw Uncle Terrence's friend talking to him by the water fountain. What friend? Alexandra demanded. The man who comes to our house sometimes. The one who asks questions about you. Millie was crying now. Uncle Terrence said he was helping with something. I ran through the courthouse hallways, Alexandra's shouts fading behind me. I found Noah by the vending machines, talking to a man I didn't recognize. The stranger saw me coming and melted into the crowd before I could reach them. Noah! I dropped to my knees, checking him over. Are you okay? What did that man want? Noah's eyes were wide, confused. He said Uncle Terrence wanted me to come with him. He said you said it was okay. But I remembered what you taught us about strangers, so I said I needed to use the bathroom first. My hands shook as I pulled him close. Whatever game Terrence was playing, it was escalating fast. Back in the conference room, Alexandra was on the phone with the school, confirming that no one had actually shown up to get Millie. It had been a test, maybe, or a distraction, but for what? We need to get you somewhere safe, Alexandra said. All of you. Today. I can't just disappear with them, I protested. That would make me look guilty of exactly what Terrence accused me of. Anne. Terrence's mother stood in the doorway, her face grave. There's something you need to know about the night Sarah died. She entered and closed the door behind her, glancing nervously at the children. Maybe they shouldn't hear this. No secrets, Millie said firmly. We're not babies. We deserve to know about our mom. Terrence's mother nodded slowly. You're right, you do. She took a deep breath. That night at the hospital, I was there earlier than everyone thinks. I saw Terrence in the parking garage. He was on the phone, pacing. I heard him say that everything was going according to plan, that the C-section would happen within hours. My stomach turned. But Sarah's C-section was an emergency. She went into distress suddenly. That's what we were told, she said quietly. But I saw him throw something in the hospital dumpster. After you all left that night, I went back and looked. She pulled out her phone, scrolling to an old photo. I found this. On the screen was a picture of a medical vial, the label partially visible. Even from where I sat, I could make out part of the word oxytocin. That's used to induce labor, Alexandra breathed. If someone gave her that without medical supervision, I kept it, Terrence's mother said. The vial. I've had it in my safety deposit box for 8 years. I was too scared to come forward, too afraid of what it meant. But when I heard he was trying to take these children, when I saw he had another pregnant girlfriend, she started crying. I can't let it happen again. The room was silent except for her sobs. I felt like the world had tilted off its axis. All these years, I'd blamed myself for leaving that night, for not being there when Sarah needed me most. But maybe nothing I did would have mattered. Maybe her fate had been sealed long before I arrived at the hospital. We need to tell the judge, Alexandra said, already reaching for her phone. This changes everything. But before she could dial, the door burst open. A court officer stood there, breathing hard. The judge wants everyone back. Now there's been a development. As we walked back to the courtroom, I noticed Crystal wasn't with Terrence anymore. His lawyer was whispering urgently in his ear, but Terrence's face was blank, almost catatonic, just like that night 8 years ago. The judge looked exhausted. I've just been informed that Ms. Crystal Martinez is at the hospital. She's in premature labor, apparently triggered by severe emotional distress. She's asked for a restraining order against Mr. Chen and has provided a statement to police. Your Honor, Terrence's lawyer started, but the judge held up her hand. Additionally, Mr. Chen's mother has come forward with physical evidence related to Sarah Chen's death. Given these circumstances, I'm issuing an emergency custody order. The minor children will remain with Ms. Ann Chen pending a full investigation. Mr. Terrence Chen is to have no contact with the children until further notice. You can't do this! Terrence came alive, lunging toward the bench. 2 bailiffs immediately restrained threatened him. "Those are my children. She stole them. She turned them against me." "Mr. Chen, you're in contempt," the judge said coldly. "Bailiffs, remove him." As they dragged him out, he screamed at me. "This isn't over. You think you've won? You don't know anything." Sarah knew too much, and look what happened to her. The courtroom fell silent. Even his lawyer looked shocked. The judge cleared her throat. "I'm referring this matter to the district attorney's office for criminal investigation. This custody hearing is adjourned indefinitely." The next morning, Terrence showed up at my workplace. Not inside, but parked across the street in his new Tesla, just watching. My manager noticed him through the window during the breakfast rush and asked if everything was okay. I explained about the custody situation, trying to keep my voice steady while plating eggs. She frowned and said Terrence had actually called yesterday, expressing concerns about my ability to handle work stress while caring for 3 children. He'd suggested maybe they should reduce my hours for everyone's benefit. My hands stilled on the plate. This was how it started, the slow dismantling of everything I'd built. I told her I needed this job, that the kids depended on it. She patted my shoulder sympathetically, but I could see the doubt creeping into her eyes. A problematic employee with custody drama wasn't worth a headache. After my shift, I found Terrence had been busy. The school called to inform me he'd added himself back onto the emergency contact list using old paperwork from 8 years ago. The secretary apologetically explained that since he was the biological father and the paperwork looked legitimate, they had to accept it. He'd also signed up to volunteer for the upcoming field trip, introducing himself to other parents as the dad who's finally able to be involved. The guardian ad litem, a woman named Patricia with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, arrived for her first home visit that afternoon. I was still in my work clothes, grease-stained and exhausted. The house was its usual controlled chaos. Lily's art supplies scattered on the coffee table, Noah's baseball gear by the door, Millie's textbooks spread across the kitchen counter where she did homework while I cooked. Patricia took notes while touring our home. In Lily's room, she paused at a comment Lily made about Uncle Terrence's big house with a pool. My heart sank as Lily innocently explained how Terrence had been telling them about all the things they could have if they lived with him. Their own rooms, new computers, vacations to Disney World. I watched Patricia write this down and wanted to scream that I'd given them everything I could, that love mattered more than pools. That evening, my neighbor knocked on my door. She looked uncomfortable as she explained that Terrence had stopped by her house asking questions. He'd wanted to know if she'd ever seen anything concerning. Did I have men over? Did I leave the kids alone? Did I drink? She'd told him to leave, but he'd mentioned he was documenting everything for the children's safety. The implied threat was clear: cooperate or become complicit in child endangerment. I started keeping a notebook, documenting everything just like I had for 8 years. But now I was documenting his harassment, his manipulations, his systematic campaign to destroy my credibility. The irony wasn't lost on me. All those years of careful record keeping to protect the kids were now being used to paint me as calculating and cold. 3 days later, I discovered Terrence had joined my grief support group, the same group I'd attended since Sarah's death, where I'd processed the trauma of that night and the overwhelming responsibility of instant motherhood. The facilitator called to give me a heads up, clearly uncomfortable. Terrence had introduced himself as a grieving widower who'd lost his children to his controlling sister, who wouldn't let him heal properly. He'd cried about missing 8 years of their lives, how I'd poisoned them against him. Several group members had approached the facilitator afterward, concerned about the poor father. I stopped attending. Another safe space lost. The first supervised visitation was scheduled for Saturday. The kids were anxious, Millie especially. She kept asking what they should talk about. What if Terrence asked questions about me? I told them to just be themselves, but I could see the weight of divided loyalty crushing her 14-year-old shoulders. Noah had started having nightmares again, the same ones from 8 years ago when he'd wake up calling for his mom. Lily drew picture after picture of our family, always 4 figures holding hands, with a 5th figure far off to the side. At the visitation center, Terrence played the perfect father. He brought gifts, exactly what each child wanted most. For Noah, the expensive gaming system I'd been saving for Christmas. For Lily, the art tablet she'd circled in catalogs. For Millie, concert tickets to her favorite band. I watched through the observation window as he spun stories about their future together, how he'd been working so hard to build a life worthy of them. The supervisor noted how engaged and loving he appeared. During the visit, he asked leading questions. Did Anne ever get angry? Did she have boyfriends over? Did she make them do too many chores? The supervisor didn't intervene. The questions seemed reasonable on the surface, but I could see my kids squirming, unsure how to answer without betraying me or angering him. When Noah mentioned I worked a lot, Terrence's face lit up. Another note for his lawyer. That night, Millie broke down. He kept saying how much better things would be when we lived with him. He said you'd still see us, just not as much. He made it sound like it was already decided. She was sobbing into my shoulder, and I held her tight, promising I'd never let him take them. But even as I said it, I wondered if it was a promise I could keep. The next week, Crystal's sister reached out. Maria was younger than Crystal, scared but determined. She asked to meet at a coffee shop downtown, constantly checking over her shoulder. Crystal was still in the hospital, she explained, the baby in NICU. Terrence visited once, complained about the bills, and left. He'd been asking about Crystal's life insurance again, suggesting she increase it for the baby's protection. She wants to help you, Maria whispered, sliding a phone across the table. She's been recording him for weeks, ever since she found out about the insurance policies. My hands shook as I scrolled through the files. Terrence's voice discussing options with someone on the phone, mentions of timing, of maximizing benefits, of how Crystal's pregnancy complications could be useful. It was damning, but also illegally obtained. Using it would destroy Crystal and possibly land her in jail for wiretapping. I gave the phone back. I couldn't destroy another woman to save myself, even if it meant losing the kids. Maria looked disappointed but understanding. She said you'd say that. That's why she wants to help. She said you're the only one who tried to protect her. Patricia scheduled another visit, this time to observe the children's routine. She arrived right at the morning rush, me trying to get 3 kids ready for school while packing lunches and finding lost homework. Lily couldn't find her favorite shirt and had a meltdown. Noah remembered his science project was due just as we were leaving. Millie helped wrangle the younger 2 while I searched for poster board. It was chaos, but it was our chaos. Patricia took notes. Later, I learned Terrence had provided Patricia with a detailed schedule of how mornings would run in his house. He'd hired a nanny who would handle breakfast while a driver took the kids to school. No stress, no chaos, no scrambling mother trying to do everything alone. On paper, it looked ideal. In reality, it was a stranger raising the kids while he went to work, but that detail got lost in the presentation. The school called called again. Terrence had been showing up regularly, eating lunch with the kids, bringing treats for their classes. Other parents were starting to know him as the devoted dad. He'd even joined the PTA, immediately volunteering for the fundraising committee. At pickup, mothers approached me with sympathy. It must be so hard, they said, keeping the kids from their father all these years. The narrative was shifting, and I was powerless to stop it. My manager pulled me aside after a particularly rough shift. There had been complaints, she said carefully, not about my work, but about the drama I was bringing to the restaurant. Terrence had been in for lunch with several business associates, loudly discussing his custody battle and how he worried about his children being raised by someone so unstable. Other customers had overheard. It was affecting business. She wasn't firing me, she stressed, but maybe I should consider taking some time off until things settled down. Unpaid time off, of course. I couldn't afford unpaid time off. I was already behind on bills from paying Alexandra's retainer. The kids needed new school clothes, Noah's baseball fees were due, and Lily's asthma medication wasn't fully covered by insurance. But I could see in my manager's eyes that this wasn't really a request. I agreed to reduce my hours, knowing it was the beginning of the end. That weekend, Terrence escalated. He filed a motion claiming I was alienating the children by coaching them before visits. His evidence? Millie had been reluctant to discuss her home life, clearly because I told her not to talk. Noah had seemed anxious, obviously because I'd threatened him. Even Lily's normal 7-year-old chatter was twisted into evidence of manipulation. His lawyer requested immediate unsupervised visitation, arguing that my presence was harmful to the father-child relationship. During the hearing on the motion, I watched Terrence perform. He wore a simple suit, not his usual designer clothes. He'd styled his hair differently, looking every inch the humble father just trying to reconnect with his children. He spoke softly about his journey of healing and how he'd worked so hard to become the father his children deserved. He admitted his mistakes with practiced humility, claiming he'd been lost in grief, but had found his way back through therapy and self-reflection. My lawyer countered with facts. 8 years of abandonment, the investigation into Sarah's death, Crystal's accusations. But facts felt cold against his emotional performance. The judge seemed moved by his apparent transformation. She granted unsupervised visitation every other weekend, starting immediately. I felt the floor drop out from under me. The first unsupervised weekend was torture. Terrence picked them up in his Tesla, car seats professionally installed, promising a weekend of fun. I spent 48 hours pacing, checking my phone obsessively, trying not to imagine worst-case scenarios. The kids texted sporadically, pictures of restaurant meals, the pool at his house, their new rooms. Everything looked perfect, too perfect. They came home Sunday night exhausted and overwhelmed. Terrence had packed every minute with activities, amusement parks, shopping, restaurants. But Millie told me the truth later, after the younger ones were asleep. He'd spent the whole weekend talking about their future together, how he was working on getting full custody. He'd introduced them to his lawyer as the children who were kept from me. He'd had them video call his friends, showing off his beautiful family, while hinting at my cruelty in keeping them apart. He made us practice, Millie whispered. Practice what we'd say to the judge about wanting to live with him. He said if we didn't help him, we might end up in foster care because you weren't really our mom. The fear in her eyes broke my heart. I held her while she cried, promising again that I'd never let that happen. But my promises were feeling increasingly hollow. The next week, I made a mistake, a big one. Exhausted from working doubles to make up for lost hours, stressed from the constant pressure, I snapped. Terrence had shown up at Noah's baseball game with a professional photographer, staging candid shots of him cheering from the stands. When he started loudly telling other parents about how he was fighting to save his children from a toxic situation, something in me broke. I confronted him in the parking lot, not quietly, not calmly. I called him a killer, a manipulator, a pathetic excuse for a father. I told him Sarah would be disgusted by what he'd become. Parents stared. Someone filmed it on their phone. Terrence stood there calmly, occasionally saying, "Please calm down and think of the children," playing the victim perfectly. The video went viral in our community Facebook groups within hours. Unhinged woman attacks father at Little League game. The comments were brutal. People who didn't know our history saw only a hysterical woman screaming at a calm man. I became the villain in a story I'd never wanted to be part of. Patricia called an emergency meeting. She'd seen the video, of course. Everyone had. She spoke carefully about emotional regulation and modeling appropriate behavior. She mentioned that Terrence had provided evidence of my pattern of hostility, including screenshots of text messages where I'd been less than friendly. Out of context, my frustrated responses to his manipulation looked aggressive and unstable. The Guardian ad litem report was due soon, and I could see which way the wind was blowing. She talked about resources and stability and two-parent household. Crystal had left the hospital and refused to press charges, too scared or too broken to fight. Without her testimony, the investigation into Sarah's death was stalling. Terrence's lawyer was pushing for a quick resolution, arguing that the uncertainty was harmful to the children. I started preparing the kids without saying it out loud, teaching Millie how to access the emergency credit card I'd hidden, making sure Noah knew my work schedule by heart, showing Lily how to call me from any phone. They knew something was shifting. Millie had started taking on more responsibility with the younger ones, practicing being their protector in case I couldn't be. Then came the financial audit. Terrence's lawyer requested full disclosure of my finances, arguing that he needed to ensure his children were being properly provided for. My bank statements told a story of struggle, overdraft fees, missed payments, credit cards maxed out for school supplies and medical bills. Next to his financial statement showing 6 figures in savings and investment accounts, I looked like exactly what he'd painted me as, a poor woman who'd kept the kids out of spite, denying them a better life. The school principal called me in for a meeting. There had been concerns raised about the children's welfare. Nothing specific, just worries about the instability at home. She mentioned how helpful Terrence had been with fundraising, how involved he was becoming. The subtext was clear. They were choosing sides, and it wasn't mine. Crystal finally reached out directly, texting from a new number. She was living with her sister, terrified but determined to warn me. Terrence had been asking about her daughter's social security number, about adding her to his insurance. The same patterns, starting again. She begged me to be careful, to protect my kids, but she still wouldn't testify, too scared of legal consequences and his retaliation. The final supervised visit before the custody hearing was a disaster. Terrence brought his lawyer to the visitation center, claiming he needed to discuss scheduling issues. But really, he wanted the kids to see him with his lawyer, to understand the power dynamic. He talked about their new school, a private academy with uniforms and Latin classes. He'd already put down deposits, he said, confident in the outcome. Noah finally broke. broke. I don't want to change schools, he shouted. I don't want to live with you. You left us. Anne is our mom now. The supervisor noted his emotional outburst, and Terrence's lawyer made sure to document how I'd clearly poisoned the child against his father. Terrence played the wounded parent, telling Noah he understood his anger and would help him work through it in therapy. At their new home, together. That night, all 3 kids crawled into my bed like they had 8 years ago. We didn't talk about the hearing tomorrow. We just held each other, pretending we'd always have this. I stared at the ceiling, running through everything in my head. 8 years of love, of sacrifice, of building a family from broken pieces, all about to be decided by a judge who'd seen Terrence at his best and me at my worst. The morning of the hearing, I dressed carefully. Not in the designer clothes I couldn't afford, but in my best clean outfit. The kids were silent at breakfast, pushing food around their plates. Millie helped Lily with her hair, braiding it the way I'd taught her. Noah polished his shoes, the ones I'd bought secondhand but kept pristine. We were a unit, facing the storm together. At the courthouse, Terrence arrived with an entourage. His lawyer, his mother, character witnesses including the principal from the private school, and a child psychologist who'd evaluated the kids during a single session he'd paid for. They swept past us in the hallway, Terrence not even glancing at the children he claimed to love so much. Patricia submitted her report to the judge, and I saw my lawyer's face fall as she skimmed it. Best interests of the children, resources to provide, biological connection, stable 2-parent household pending. The words blurred together into a recommendation that would destroy everything. As we entered the courtroom for what might be our last hearing as a family, Millie squeezed my hand. No matter what happens, she whispered, you're our real mom. He can't change that. I squeezed back, hoping she was right, knowing that sometimes love wasn't enough in a system that valued biology and bank accounts over 8 years of bedtime stories and bandaged knees. The bailiff called us to order, and I steeled myself for the fight of my life, not just for custody, but for the very definition of what made a family. The judge entered, and I could see in her eyes that she'd already made up her mind. My heart sank, but I stood straight. If I was going to lose them, I'd do it with dignity. They deserved that much from the only mother they'd really known. The judge's voice cut through the courtroom tension. Before we proceed with custody determinations, I need to address the ongoing criminal investigation. She shuffled papers, her reading glasses perched on her nose. The district attorney has declined to pursue charges regarding Sarah Chen's death at this time, citing insufficient evidence. My stomach dropped. Beside me, Alexandra's jaw tightened. Across the aisle, Terrence straightened in his chair, a ghost of a smile playing at his lips. However, the judge continued, Child Protective Services has completed their assessment. She looked directly at Terrence. Mr. Chen, while no criminal charges are being filed, CPS has documented concerning patterns of behavior that require ongoing monitoring. Terrence's lawyer stood. Your Honor, my client has been fully cooperative. These vague concerns shouldn't impact custody decisions. The judge held up her hand. I'll determine what impacts my decision, counselor. She turned to Patricia. Ms. Patricia, please present your guardian ad litem report. Patricia stood, clutching her folder. She detailed her observations, our chaotic but loving morning routine, the children's clear attachment to me, but also Terrence's resources and newfound involvement. Her recommendation was measured. Given the children's established routine and emotional well-being, I recommend primary physical custody remain with Ms. Anne Chen, with Mr. Terrence Chen receiving graduated visitation leading to shared custody within 6 months. That's unacceptable, Terrence burst out, earning a sharp look from his lawyer. Those are my children. I have rights. The judge's expression remained neutral. You do have rights, Mr. Chen. You also had responsibilities, which you abandoned for 8 years. She paused, studying the documents before her. I'm prepared to issue my ruling. My hand found Millie's under the table. Noah pressed closer to my other side while Lily sat in my lap, her small fingers twisted in my shirt. In the matter of custody for Millie, Noah, and Lily Chen, the judge began, I find that maintaining stability is paramount. Ms. Anne Chen has been the de facto parent for 8 years, providing consistent care despite significant personal sacrifice. I held my breath. However, she continued, Mr. Terrence Chen is the biological father and has demonstrated renewed interest in parenting. The court cannot ignore biological ties or his current stability. My heart sank. I knew where this was heading. Therefore, I'm ordering a stepped custody arrangement. Ms. Anne Chen will retain primary physical custody. Mr. Terrence Chen will have visitation every other weekend, progressing to week-on, week-off custody in 6 months if all parties comply with court orders. No! Noah's voice cracked. I won't go. The judge's eyes softened slightly. Young man, I understand this is difficult. That's why I'm also ordering family counseling for all parties. Terrence was already whispering excitedly to his lawyer. I felt numb, knowing this was just the beginning. 6 months. I had 6 months before the kids would be split between 2 homes, 2 lives. Additionally, the judge continued, given the financial disparity between parties, Mr. Chen will pay child support retroactive to the date of abandonment. Terrence's celebration stopped cold. What? But I'm getting custody. Shared custody eventually, the judge corrected. And you owe 8 years of support. My calculations show approximately $165,000. His face went purple. That's impossible. I was healing. You were in Peru, the judge said flatly, while Ms. Chen worked multiple jobs. Court adjourned. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of forced normalcy. I returned to work full-time, needing every penny for the legal bills. The kids attended their first weekend visitation, returning Sunday night with expensive gifts and hollow eyes. Millie reported that Terrence had spent most of the time on his phone, leaving them with the nanny he'd hired. Crystal reached out again through Maria. She'd left the hospital with her daughter, was staying in a women's shelter. She wanted to meet, said she had something important to tell me. We met at a McDonald's playground where her daughter could play. I found something, she said quietly, watching her baby toddle around. In his home office, bank statements from 8 years ago. She slid a manila envelope across the table. He transferred money from Sarah's account the day before she died. $50,000. I stared at the papers. The implications were staggering, but without the original documents, it was just hearsay. I can't testify, Crystal said quickly. I took these without permission, but maybe it helps somehow. The family counseling sessions were torture. Dr. Brennan, the court-appointed therapist, seemed competent, but overwhelmed by the dynamics. Terrence performed beautifully, speaking about his grief, his growth, his desperate desire to be a father. When the kids expressed reluctance, he blamed my influence. When they mentioned his abandonment, he redirected to his current efforts. After one particularly difficult session where Noah had shut down completely, Dr. Brennan asked to speak with me privately. Anne, the children need to accept this new reality. Your resistance is making it harder for them. My resistance? I struggled to keep keep my voice level. I'm following court orders. I'm bringing them to visits. I'm attending counseling. Yes, but children pick up on unspoken feelings. Perhaps if you were more supportive of their relationship with their father. I left feeling gaslit and defeated. Even the therapist was buying Terrence's act. The financial pressure mounted. The retroactive child support Terrence owed was tied up in appeals. Meanwhile, my reduced work hours had put me behind on rent. I started selling things. My grandmother's jewelry, the decent furniture, anything worth money. The kids noticed but didn't complain. Understanding in that way children forced to grow up too fast always do. Then Terrence escalated again. He filed a motion claiming I was in contempt for alienating the children. His evidence? Lily had drawn a family picture at school without him in it. Noah had written an essay about his hero, me, without mentioning his father. Millie had declined to friend him on social media. The hearing was scheduled for a Friday. Thursday night, while preparing my response, I got a call from an unknown number. Anne, this is Nicole. I'm a nurse at Mercy General. I was there the night Sarah died. Her voice was shaking. I saw the news about your custody case. I need to tell someone what really happened that night. We met at a coffee shop near the hospital. Nicole was young, nervous, constantly checking over her shoulder. I was new, just out of nursing school. Sarah was my patient. She was terrified, begging us not to let her husband in the room. She said he'd done something to her, made her sick. My hands trembled around my coffee cup. What did you do? I told the attending physician. He said she was just having pregnancy anxiety, but her symptoms, they weren't normal. The way she crashed so suddenly. I've seen a lot of births since then. That wasn't natural. Would you testify to this? She shook her head. I can't. I could lose my license, but I kept copies of her charts. I was scared something would happen. She slid a flash drive across the table. Her blood work showed traces of something that shouldn't have been there. Nobody followed up because she died. I took the drive with shaking hands. Evidence that couldn't be used. Testimony that wouldn't be given. The truth that couldn't save us. The contempt hearing was brutal. Terrence's lawyer painted me as a vindictive woman who'd stolen children and was now poisoning them against their rightful father. Alexandra fought back, but without concrete evidence of alienation, we were losing ground. Then Millie asked to speak. Your Honor, she said, her 14-year-old voice steady despite her shaking hands. Anne isn't making us hate our father. He did that himself when he left us. She's the one who told us to give him a chance. She's the one who makes us go to visits even when we don't want to. If anyone's alienating us, it's him, by trying to buy us and pretend 8 years didn't happen. The judge listened, her face unreadable. Noah and Lily remained silent, but their body language spoke volumes. The way they leaned away from Terrence, how they unconsciously moved closer to me. I find no evidence of contempt, the judge finally ruled. However, Mr. Chen, I'm concerned about your approach. Children's affections cannot be purchased or litigated. I'm ordering individual therapy for each child, in addition to family sessions. More therapy, more expenses, more time away from work. The cycle continued. Maria called that night. Crystal was back in the hospital. Complications from the birth, infections, stress-induced problems. She was asking for me. I found Crystal pale and fragile in her hospital bed, her sister holding the baby. I'm dying, she said simply. The doctors won't say it, but I know. My body's shutting down. Crystal, listen. She gripped my hand with surprising strength. I've been recording everything. Every conversation with Terrence since I found out about the insurance. It's all in a cloud account. Maria has the password. She coughed. Specks of blood on her lips. When I'm gone, use it. Don't let him do this to another woman. She died 3 days later. Terrence didn't attend the funeral. The recordings were devastating but legally complex. Terrence discussing insurance policies, pushing for early delivery, complaining about medical costs. Nothing explicitly criminal, but a clear pattern. Alexandra consulted with colleagues. The recordings were made in a state requiring two-party consent. Using them would be illegal. But, she said slowly, if someone were to anonymously send them to CPS, and CPS were to find them concerning enough to expand their investigation, I understood. That night, Maria created a new email account from a library computer. The 6-month mark approached like a storm cloud. Terrence had been minimally compliant, attending visits but spending most of the time on his phone, showing up to therapy but deflecting responsibility, paying partial child support but claiming financial hardship. 2 weeks before the custody change, everything shifted. CPS showed up at Terrence's house for a routine check based on anonymous concerns. They found prescription medications not in his name, empty alcohol bottles despite him claiming sobriety in court, and the nanny reporting she was essentially raising the children during visits. The emergency hearing was called for Monday. All weekend the kids were anxious. Lily's asthma acting up, Noah unable to eat, Millie pacing like a caged animal. I wanted to promise them everything would be okay, but I'd learned not to make promises the system might break. Monday morning, we arrived to find Terrence already there with a new lawyer, his third. His mother sat in the back row, looking older, smaller. She caught my eye and nodded slightly. Your Honor, Terrence's new lawyer began. My client believes there's been a conspiracy against him. These anonymous reports, the CPS investigation, it's all orchestrated by Ms. Chen to prevent him from exercising his parental rights. The judge looked tired. Counselor, do you have evidence of this conspiracy? The timing is suspicious. That's not evidence. CPS, please present your findings. The CPS worker was thorough. The prescription medications were painkillers from multiple doctors. The nanny reported Terrence was often absent during visits, leaving her with the children. Most damning, they'd interviewed the children separately, and all three had expressed fear about increased custody time. Mr. Chen, the judge said, you've had 6 months to demonstrate your commitment to parenting. Instead, I see minimal effort and continued concerning behavior. I'm modifying my previous order. Terrence shot to his feet. You can't do this. They're my children. Sit down, Mr. Chen, or you'll be removed. The judge waited until he complied. Custody will remain with Ms. Ann Chen. Your visitation is reduced to supervised visits only, pending completion of parenting classes and substance abuse evaluation. This is kidnapping, Terrence shouted. She stole them. She turned everyone against me. I'll appeal. I'll sue. You'll be held in contempt if you continue, the judge said coldly. Court adjourned. As the bailiff escorted Terrence out, still ranting about conspiracies and stolen children, his mother approached us. I'm sorry, she said quietly, for everything, for not protecting Sarah, for enabling him, for taking so long to see what he really is. She pressed an envelope into my hand. This won't fix anything, but maybe it helps. It was a check for $50,000, his father's life insurance, she explained. It should have gone to the children years ago. The next months were a blur of supervised visits that Terrence often missed, therapy sessions where the kids slowly began to process their trauma, and gradual return to stability. The money from Terrence's mother paid off the legal bills and caught up the rent. I even managed to start a small college fund for each child. Terrence's appeals went nowhere. His supervised visits became less frequent as he lost interest without an audience to perform for. The last I heard, he'd moved to another state, was dating someone new. I pray for her. Crystal's daughter was adopted by Maria, who sends photos sometimes. She has her mother's eyes, but hopefully not her mother's fate. The kids are healing. Millie started high school, joining drama club where she can channel all those big emotions into something positive. Noah made the baseball team and found his confidence again. Lily's artwork shifted from dark scenes to bright landscapes full of hope. We're not the same family we were before this all started. We're scarred, cautious, aware of how quickly stability can shatter. But we're together. Not because a court said so, but because we chose each other, fought for each other, survived together. Some nights I still wake up in a panic, checking that the kids are safe in their beds. Some days I see Terrence's car in traffic and my heart stops until I realize it's a stranger. The trauma doesn't vanish just because we won this round. But tonight we're making tacos for dinner, Lily's favorite. Noah's helping with homework while Millie sets the table. It's beautifully ordinary, this life we've protected. Worth every sacrifice, every sleepless night, every moment of terror. The system almost failed us. Money and manipulation almost won. But love, messy, exhausted, imperfect love, endured. 8 years ago, I became their guardian by default. Today, I'm their mother by choice. And that's a truth no court can change.